So, as we enter the summer of 2019, our thoughts go back to our great summer viewing pleasures of the mid 1970s. On CBC in Canada, you had Expo Baseball, you had the Game of the Week broadcast in French on most of the TV on CBC networks. And of course, on Saturday afternoons, we had something called Space 1999. Now, Space 1999 has grown in popularity since its original two seasons from 1975 to 1977. It served as a syndication competition to reruns of Star Trek, but in the mid 1970s, I really believe that its success led to a decision by various producers through the years of science fiction syndication, including the producers of Star Trek The Next Generation and other shows, to go the syndication route because rather than the network route, because most science fiction series would be hampered on the major networks in Canada and the States. Now, Space 1999, for the five people out there who've never heard of the show, it's a British-Italian science fiction, again, program that ran for those two seasons, 75 to 77 pretty much. Now, in the pilot or opening episode, set in the year 1999, nuclear waste that has been stored on Moon's far side explodes, knocking the Moon out of orbit and sending it and its 311 inhabitants of Moonbase Alpha into uncontrollably into space. The Moonbase Alpha buildings are intact, but they're literally, they don't know where they're going. They split off from the Earth, they lose contact, and trouble and danger and adventure and everything ensues. Now, Space 1999 was the last production by the partnership of Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, and of course, to many people, was the most expensive series produced for British television up to that time. Now, because it was a British-Italian production, it was shared costs. Now, the first season was co-produced by ITC Entertainment and Italian broadcaster Rai, with the second season produced solely by ITC. Now, the first season is a little bit more Twilight Zone-ish and dark. In theory, a lot of cerebral stuff. Season 2 had more action. I don't think anybody expected the first season to be exactly like the second season, but there's some people that have favorites of the show, favor season 1 over season 2. Now, Space 1999 was the final in a long line of science fiction series that the Andersons produced as a working partnership because the divorce broke up later on. It started with the infamous supercar in the early 1960s, and including the famed Marionette fantasy programs Fireball XL 5, Stingray, the classic Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet and Mysterians, Joe 95, and the Secret Service, as well as a live-action sci-fi drama UFO. Now, Space 1999 owes much of its visual design to pre-production work for the never-made second series of UFO, which would have been set primarily on the Moon and featured a more extensive moon base. Now, a lot of people probably know this. Space 99 drew a lot of its visual inspiration and technical expertise from the Stanley Kubrick hit 2001: A Space Odyssey. Now, its special effects director Brian Johnson also worked on Thunderbirds and 2001, so you see the parallels with use of dark against light in the series. Now, in 1972, Sir Lou Grade, who was the head of ITC Entertainment, proposed financing a second series of the Century 21 production UFO to the Andersons. Now, Grade had one stipulation: the new series would be set primarily on the Moon within the environs of an expanded shadow moon base. Now, the ratings indicated the moon-centric episodes had proven more popular with the viewers of UFO. The Andersons and their team would quickly revamp the production, flashing ahead nearly 20 years for a proposed series called UFO 1999, with Commander Ed Straker and the forces of Shadow fighting their alien foes from a large new moon-based facility. However, towards the end of its run, UFO experienced a sudden drop in ratings in both the States and UK, and nervous IT executives in both countries began to question the financial viability of the new series, and support, of course, for this expansion collapse. In the meantime, production designer Keith Wilson and the art department had made considerable progress envisioning the look and design of the new series. Their work was then shelved for the foreseeable future. But of course, Anderson would not let the project die. He approached Grades number 2 in New York, Abe Mandel, with a proposal for taking research and development done for UFO 1999 and creating a new science fiction series. Mandel was amiable, but stated he did not want a series featuring people haven't seen the Midlands and forbade any Earth-bound settings. Anderson responded that in the series opener, he would blow up the Earth. Mandel countered that his concept might be off-putting to viewers, to which Anderson replied he would blow up the moon. Now, the Andersons reworked UFO 1999 in a new premise, and according to scripts that were put together, Commander Stephen Maddox controlled the forces of Wander, Earth's premier defense organization from Moon City, a 20-mile installation on the moon. Maddox would view all aspects of Earth defense from central control, a facility at the hub of the base and accessible only by Moonhopper craft, which would require the correct passcode to traverse Control's defensive laser barrier. The commander would also have access to a personal computer called ComCom, or a commander's computer, which would act as a personal advisor, having been programmed with the commander's personality and moral sense. Now, in the proposed half-hour opening episode 0G, which is penned by the Andersons, Earth's deep space probes have discovered an advanced extraterrestrial civilization, and from then on, various similar plot devices were proposed. And in this one, Mannix was kidnapped for an interview with the aliens. Now, the project continued forward, and Group 3 Productions, which was a partnership with the Andersons and production executive Reg Hill, was to produce the series, but then ITC Entertainment and the Italian broadcaster Rai were to provide the funding. Now, Grade was trying to sell this to a U.S. network, insisted that the series have American leads and enjoy American view writers and directors. George Belak, a well-known American television writer, was brought on staff. As stated by series writers Christopher Penfold and Johnny Byrne, it was Belak who created and polished the series' defining concepts. Belak wrote a 90-minute opening episode called The Void Ahead, which was a close forerunner to the classic, pilot series, the first episode, Breakaway. Belak also set up a writer's guide defining the three leads, the facilities of the moon base, and the potential storylines. At this point, the staff seemed to make certain creative changes that brought the series closer in concept and appearance to 2001: A Space Odyssey. Even the title Space 1999 evoked comparison with Kubrick's filmed. Now, there was other new titles for the series that were proposed, including Space Journey 1999, Journey in Space, Menace in Space, and Space Invaders, the invaders of the last title being the Earthmen trapped on a runaway moon. Now, for the lead characters of John Koenig and Helena Russell, Jerry Anderson approached the husband and wife acting team of Martin Landau and Barbara Bain. Landau and Bain were high-profile stars in America after 3 years in the popular CBS espionage series Mission Impossible. Now, producer Sylvia Anderson let it be known that she would have preferred British lead actors. Since Grade insisted on Americans, she would have chosen Robert Culp, actually a big hit in the Bill Cosby series he did with him called I Spy, and the beautiful and talented Catherine Ross, who was a co-star of the 1960s blockbusters The Graduate and Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Now, Leahy Katzin, a highly respected American television director with a specialty for pilot episodes, was selected to direct the opening segment and brought into the fold as a primary director for the remainder of the series. Now, as it stands from there, as the November 1973 start date approached, Belak fell out with Jerry Anderson over creative issues and left the production. Story consultant Christopher Penfold acted as head writer, bringing in American writer Edward De Lorenzo and Irish poet Johnny Byrne as script editors. And Penfold reworked Belak's open episode in a 1-hour draft, first retitled Turning Point, then finalized as Breakaway. Now, scheduled for 10 days filming, Breakaway overran an additional 15 days. Lee Katzin was a perfectionist and demanded take after take of scenes. Even coverage of action shots of the background extras required running a whole scene from beginning to end. His 2-hour director's cut was assembled and sent to ITC New York for viewing. And there's still rumors there's a 2-hour version of Breakaway out there, and I've seen some extra scenes in Canada that haven't been repeated since. So it might have been around the 57-minute mark or 53, which was typical at the time. Now, Abe Mandel was horrified by the finished product, so Anderson rewrote several key scenes, and after 3 days of reshoots, re-edited the pilot in a 1-hour episode that appeased the fears of ITC. Now, Katzin was not asked back to the program after the filming of the second episode, Black Sun, which also ran over schedule. Now, the first season was scheduled for a 12-month shoot. The 24 episodes took 15 months to complete, with the production experiencing a number of difficulties. Now, Britain's mandatory 3-day work week in the early months of '74 and the unplugging of the national grid during the coal shortages due to industrial unrest in the early '70s did not delay filming, for Pinewood had its own generators where he filmed, but affected film processing because the lab was an off-contractor. Now, as it went along, very important critics in Canada, States, worldwide were brought in to review the pilot series, and it was sold to many international channels. It couldn't pick up a U.S. network. I'll give an example. It was popular and probably top 5 show in many countries, including France, Italy, Yugoslavia, Poland, Ethiopia, Nigeria, South Africa, Turkey, Iran, Greece, the Netherlands, Belgium, Portugal, Peru, Japan, Malaysia, my home country of Canada, Mexico, Philippines, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. Now, one of the first previews of the series was in Australia on the 7 network in July '75, but the station later split the first into 2 seasons, and the second season was shown in 1975. Now, response to the series varied, as some critics claimed it was a classic because of the production values and its cousin it related to, like the 2001 fans. But some people said it was visually stunning, but others panned it for poor plotting and wooden acting. But with Barbara Bain and Barry Morris and Martin Landau as the key actors, that would be just basically a negative way to describe the fact that the acting was basically designed to fit the scenario. You're not going to have a science fiction soliloquy of 15 minutes. It's not Shakespearean. Now, one of the biggest critics actually was the great Isaac Asimov, who criticized the scientific accuracy of the series by pointing out that any explosion capable of knocking the moon off its orbit would actually blow it apart, and even if it did leave orbit, it would take thousands of years to reach a nearest star. He also noted that describing moon base alpha as being on the dark side of the moon was an error, as no part of the moon is permanently dark. Now, Jerry and Sylvia Anderson, of course, were surprised and disappointed that the public and critics never grant them the suspension of disbelief that was given for Star Trek and other science fiction programs, and because the characters in many ways seem unaware of the apparent implausibility of their situation. Now, in Black Sun, of course, the famous second episode, Victor Bergman asserts the chances of their surviving explosion, which knocked him into orbit, as just about infinite. Now, the show was eventually did well in the first season. It was canceled. It was rejigged and brought back. But we all know that. I mentioned in a previous podcast. For those on the Space 1999 site, you know what I'm talking about. Now, the show was merchandised to death. It was translated in many languages. It had various, compilation, big screen revivals. And as it stands right now, some 47 years since it was first conceived, it still ranks as, to many, the second most important science fiction television show of all time. Not because of ratings and not because of duration, but because it brought the best of the 1970s science fiction to the small screen. You could watch Star Wars on the big screen. You could watch, numerous science fiction shows. But for some reason, Space 1999 seemed not only cerebral but action packed. A little bit more to Star Trek. Again, the music was tremendous in Ennio Morricone. The plotting was great. The guest stars were great. The contrast of dark and light. The overall, not say romanticism, but it was a wagon train in space, like the great bird Gene Roddenberry said about Star Trek. This was wagon train in space because you never know what was going to happen. You could meet up with youthful aliens who were trying to blow up the moon, or parallel time or time travelers, or people that were trying to understand why the moon was no longer part of the Earth. Like, what are you doing here? So overall, the fan base has stayed strong, and again, most Canadians of a certain age, I'm 53. Most Canadians grew up in the 1970s. They can hear that opening theme of the pilot's recap, which that's really weird. If for people who haven't seen Space 1999, all five of you, the first season gives away the whole episode or scenes of the episode in the first 5 minutes, and kind of this throwing back. Second season is not as much, as more about action, but it stands out as one of the few shows where literally you're giving away the show before it starts. You want people to view, but people are so fascinated by the teaser trailer at the first. And to my memory, there was very few teaser trailers shown. The teaser trailer was part of the episode. So, and one last thing before I leave you go, the merchandising, I talked about it a while ago. There's so much merchandising up there through Whitman, through different companies. I don't think that it's valued enough by collectors, because a lot of the Star Trek stuff of that era, or the 70s, 60s, and 70s, is quite expensive. The Star Trek stuff is quite inexpensive. But with the passing of Mark Landau and Barry Morse, and the overall amount of actors from the show who have done celebrity events, it should rank quite higher with collectors, and it doesn't. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Space 1999 an 8.5. I can't give any show a 10, but the second season, to me, Catherine Shell was more like the Catherine Shell show, like with her shape-shifting. Season 1 really stands out because Barry Morse, our great Canadian British actor, is the center of it, and he makes everything plausible because Victor Bergman has the aspects of Spock and Chekhov and all the key Sulu, the key cerebral people of Star Trek, all rolled into one, and a little bit of Shakespearean too in season 1. So again, season 1 better than season 2. We all know that, because I mean, your first girlfriend, whether she's bad to you or not, that's all going to stay in your mind. But for us in the 1970s, again, Saturday afternoons on CBC, and later on YTV in the 1990s, were all about Space 1999. A bag of Hostess chips, a pizza, a bottle of pop. You sit down and you're brought away. And remember, 1975, 76, 77, VHSs weren't common. And once you missed an episode, you had to wait literally months to see it, or hope to God someone would watch it and tell you what was going on. So on this beautiful Friday in New Brunswick, where a big rainstorm had passed, we wish you the best. And as we like to say amongst the Space 1999 fans in New Brunswick, keep watching the skies. You never know if a moon will pass by looking for a home. Have a good day. Bye.